On December 15, 1961, IRS agent Fred G. Pastore stepped to the microphone at a packed press conference in downtown Boston. What he announced would surprise everyone in the room and send shockwaves throughout the nation. The city's underworld would never be the same. This is the story of Agent Zero. This is a story that's never been told. A story about the rise of the mafia in the U.S. and what the government did to fight back. A story about government corruption at the highest levels, about Eisenhower and the Kennedys. It's a story about a Boston that doesn't exist anymore, when corruption ran rampant, racketeers operated with impunity, and the city was seized by a vicious turf war between gangsters who were far more deadly than Whitey Bulger. But most of all, it's a story about loyalty, about friendship, betrayal, and vengeance. Fred Pastore was born in 1919 in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, to two recent Italian immigrants, and moved with his family to Boston at the age of 5. As Fred grew up, it was obvious to everyone around him how smart he was. The type of smarts that would make a poor, uneducated family like his see college as a viable option for him.
He lived in East Boston in a little alley called Appian Place. And that, of course, would have been an Italian ghetto.
So East Boston was predominantly Italian. It's a city. It's a city that's tight. It's not like the suburbs.
Soon after Fred was born in 1919, an event would take place that would change the country forever. Prohibition was enacted in 1920 and gave the mafia a new and immensely lucrative revenue stream. And with that, Lucky Luciano created the Commission to unify families and organize operations, while organized crime previously focused on other rackets. By the time Luciano formed the Commission, they were focused almost exclusively on bootlegging, and there was nowhere in America where that was more true than Chicago.
World War I is over, and so are America's days of legal alcoholic drink prohibition in the 1920s. Triggers an era of lawlessness in America. Running is another profitable business of the day. Countless hundreds prosper in business of bootleg. Chicago alone boasts of having 20,000 speakeasies.
And when it came to supplying those 20,000 speakeasies, there was one bootlegger who prospered above all others in Chicago, becoming a legend in the process.
He was a killer, he was a briber, he was a pimp, he was a seducer, and he violated the law.
The most powerful man in the underworld is Scarface Al Capone.
He appeared untouchable. What the federal government needed was a new plan of attack and a new type of agent to carry it out. One who was willing to put down the accountant's ledger and pick up a badge and a gun. Now, the IRS knew that Capone couldn't claim his true income because it came from illegal sources. It was literally just a matter of following the money. And so in a process that would become a blueprint for the intelligence division, Al Capone was sentenced to the stiffest penalty ever given to a tax evader.
In Chicago, Capone has been sentenced. Big Al has bought the farm. 11 years in the slammer and big bucks in fines. The Revenue Bureau intelligence boys did the damage.
Mr. Alphonse Capone, alias the Big Shot, has met the enemy and he is theirs.
Did they get him for loan sharking, prostitution, extortion, murder? Nothing, right? What do they get him on? Taxes.
The federal government now had a successful strategy in place to prosecute mafia kingpins, and Al Capone was hardly the only one. In fact, there were versions of Capone popping up in dozens of cities across the U.S., and in order to go after them, the IRS began recruiting ambitious young men to train. Fred Pastore was one of those young men, and being a genius with numbers, he would eventually take the CPA exam and end up testing in the top 10 in the state of Massachusetts.
Soon after he passed the test, he was hired by the IRS right after World War II ended. So my uncle was trained to shoot guns and investigate racketeers.
They knew Fred was a special kid. He was a pretty brilliant kid.
Uncle Fred grew up through the Depression. Then he ends up going to Northeastern, MIT, So here's a street kid with a college education. I mean, I don't think you can get anybody more rounded than that.
Now, the mandate of the Intelligence Division was to carry out complex investigations of racketeers and other large-scale tax fraud cases. He immediately took a liking to it and hit the ground running. Fred was a natural.
Fred Pastore was a manager in the Intelligence Division.
Fred, I think, was the only CPA, had to be the only CPA, all the, I think there were 4 squads, which comprised the Intelligence Division.
He was a great IRS guy. He was brilliant.
This guy, Pastore, was clearly the smartest and brightest of them all. Fred could put a case together. He was good at that. He really could do that. He could figure out where the money went.
He loved it. He was alive at work.
Yeah.
He had a personality at work. He made everybody who came in contact with him want to find something that they loved to do.
Oh, that's one of his courage. He was a man of courage. He was smart. He was loving. I don't know, he had all the good attributes that you could want.
Almost made it look easy, it sounded like.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Fred's early success quickly led to a lot of media attention in Boston, a city that at the time had over 5 daily newspapers.
The IRS had a mission at that time. It needed good publicity. And Dad was great publicity.
Well, I would see the headlines in the Morning Record America, and there was always a picture of Fred Pastore on the front page.
They used to call him the Elliot Ness.
The Elliot Ness of Boston.
The Elliot Ness of Boston.
Internal Revenue Agent Fred G. Pastore today moved to seek grand jury indictments following statewide raids in 30 Massachusetts communities in which T-men seized some $40,000 worth of gambling equipment. T-men's raids hit 54 cities from Hub to Los Angeles. T-men smash huge bookie ring. Feds invade Boston. Smash $26 million betting ring.
He also led a 6-month investigation and high-profile sting operation of a complex organized gambling ring at the Raytheon World Headquarters, just north of Boston.
So Raytheon's a defense contractor. Management noticed that there was a problem with production. So when the IRS infiltrated the factory, they posed as janitors, and they discovered that there was gambling going on in the men's toilet room.
But his main focus was leading investigations into local mafia-backed gambling syndicates that were ubiquitous all across the city of Boston. Gambling, and numbers in particular, were a specialty of the New England mob.
I'm talking about a definite syndicate operation that strictly starts with gambling. It all starts with gambling. All starts with gambling. Without gambling, they got nothing.
When Lucky Luciano originally set up the commission, New England had been represented as its own region. And by the time the 1950s rolled around, there was one man in firm control of the New England Mafia.
In those days, everybody in Rhode Island and most people in Massachusetts knew a person simply by the name of Raymond.
This Raymond Patriarca.
Raymond Patriarca.
Said to be the boss of the New England Crime Syndicate.
The man in charge of the New England mob.
The Patriarca crime family.
Raymond Patriarca of Providence, Rhode Island, is the boss.
Raymond Patriarca was he was the man, they called him, and he was the boss.
At some point, he had been made as a mafia member by the Genovese family, and actually he'd probably been made either by Lucky Luciano himself or by Frank Costello.
So Raymond Patriarca was an extremely powerful figure in the underworld with deep ties to the New York families and gambling interests from Cuba to Las Vegas. But he ran his empire from a small coin-o-matic vending machine storefront in the heavily Italian Federal Hill section of Providence, Rhode Island, known to everyone else as The Office.
Now imagine, like, Raymond sits in Rhode Island, and there's this, that's the middle of a wheel, and all these folks run out, lines of them into Worcester, into Springfield, into Boston, and all these different cities and suburban towns. Now, when the lines go there, he has an office there, the main office in each town or city. Now, in that main office, there might be 25 25 chartered clubs or bars, more than that, in that city, that all turn back to that main office. You understand that, when it deals in volume, it brings it back millions and millions and billions of dollars a year.
That's Joseph Barboza, the notorious assassin from the Patriarcha crime family.
This is Walter Cronkite. In the next hour, we shall present a repeat broadcast of a controversial CBS Reports program, Biography of a Bookie Joint. The original broadcast of this program was not shown in Massachusetts because the program contains material relating to criminal trials then pending in that state.
Fred was out doing all these raids in Boston, and a lot of this bookmaking activity was occurring literally underneath the noses of, Boston police officers,
The bookmakers supplied the money to organize crime to allow them to do other things. So bookmakers were always a target.
He had agents in there who would go in and place bets and pretend to be construction workers or pretend to have a lot of money, and who actually built up relationships with the racketeers and the people who had the gambling establishments, build up relationships so that when he finally pulled a raid, they were shocked and he had all the inside.
Raymond Patriarcha may have ran his empire from Providence, but it was the Boston area that really made him rich. And it was the Boston area where Fred conducted the vast majority of his investigations.
The New England underboss, Jerry Angiulo.
Gennaro Angiulo. Jerry Angiulo.
Jerry Angiulo.
Jerry Angiulo.
The man who controls this empire of illegal activities is Gennaro J. Angiulo. Angiulo answers only to Raymond Patriarcha in Providence.
So Jerry Angiulo in 1950, there's like 5 brothers, and they're from the North End. And Jerry, again's got a good head for numbers, not a real violent guy. When the Kefauver, Senator Estes Kefauver was doing this. He was trying to run for president by doing all these organized crime hearings. So when he was coming to Boston, all the older mafia guys left over from Prohibition, they just said, we got enough money. We don't need this crap. So they just left. And that kind of left the door open for Angiulo to move in and take over all the numbers. Especially, that was the big thing, numbers.
That was Howie Carr, longtime Boston media personality and author of multiple best-selling books about the city's underworld. As soon as Jerry Angiulo started bringing in big money, he began attracting attention, both wanted and unwanted. While Raymond Patriarcha quickly took notice of how much money he was making, so did the violent Boston Mafia soldier by the name of Ilario Zannino, a.k.a. Larry Bayonne, who began shaking him down.
Zannino was real muscle. Zannino was from the South End. He supposedly shot a waiter one time for being slow with an order. And he used to have a car that had one of the last cars that had running boards. And the reason he kept the car was he liked to hang off the car and shoot people on the street. So he was just a really bad guy. So he went that. So he's shaking down Angiulo, and Angiulo's going, "What the hell am I working for if this guy's stealing all the money?" So Angiulo goes, supposedly, according to legend, goes down to Providence and says to Patriarcha, I need some protection, and then gives him a bag with $50,000 cash in it. This is the early 1950s or mid-1950s. And at that point, Patriarcha says, okay, so I'm giving you Bayonne, and Bayonne's your guy now, and he works for you, and you just keep the money coming to me. And that's how Angiulo got into the mob.
He had his thumb on Boston. He ran Boston for Raymond Patriarcha. There's no doubt about that.
He was a businessman. Do you know, that's what set him apart from everyone else.
Jerry was, some type of a genius with these numbers. He was a good businessman. And that's the thing, though, with Jerry. Jerry was a money guy.
Jerry ran his businesses full time. And because the popularity of gambling and the profitability of money lending, which goes along with it, he became super rich.
Jerry Angiulo was not like Whitey Bulger in the sense that you had to pay him tribute or die. All Jerry required was that you give him your layoffs. This client of mine told me how he would come in every month to the North End to settle with Jerry, and that occasionally Jerry would say, "We had a good month. Here's an extra $5,000. Now that's what a businessman would do. So that's what made him successful in his illegal business.
It was a natural partnership. The battle lines were drawn, Fred and his unit against Jerry and Julo and any like-minded racketeer. It was a true battle of wits. But Fred was at the top of his game, with a whole unit of loyal, hand-picked agents backing up his every move. Now, most gangsters in New England with half a brain knew they could literally get away with murder because there was no such thing as DNA testing, and any witnesses were scared shitless. Now, what scared the gangsters were people like Fred and his team spending long hours infiltrating and investigating the most intimate parts of their gambling operations, just fucking with their money, and possibly putting them behind bars. Not only was Fred affecting the Mafia's bottom line, in 1958, his investigations into a local area business tycoon led him directly to the White House.
White House Chief of Staff Sherman Adams improperly received gifts from Boston industrialist Bernard Goldfein.
On September 22nd, Adams resigned as presidential assistant.
The incoming JFK administration, specifically his brother and Attorney General Bobby Kennedy, thought Fred was getting a little too close for comfort, so they pressured the IRS to reassign Fred from their home state of Massachusetts to Syracuse, New York. Fred decided to fight back. He stood up to their attempt to shut down his work and announced that starting immediately, he was resigning from the agency and would be opening his own tax fraud advisory firm right across the street from the IRS. So, the government's #1 weapon against tax fraud and organized crime now turned against them and became an unrivaled opponent for the next 28 years. And things were about to get a whole lot crazier. Coming up on this season of Agent Zero.
How long did it take him to get going?
Oh, overnight. Oh, when anybody ever heard that he was out on the street, whoa.
Last week, 2 reputed gangsters in Boston, Gennaro Angiulo and Ilario Zanino.
Boston area gangster Cadillac Frank Salemi.
The man said to be the boss of the New England crime syndicate.
I remember looking out the windows and having my parents tell me that we were under surveillance.
He was a great IRS guy. He was brilliant. Got screwed by the politicians.
You know, he's the guy who knew everything, knew too much.
Revenge was his motivator. It was, what can we do today to beat the IRS?
Fred was the incarnation, the embodiment of that well-known aphorism, living well is the best revenge.